3, 2, 1. It ain't just about the music. Bye.
Howdy, boss. Welcome to a Thursday Collection Connection, where we're playing a game that's just an excuse to talk about records. Play the game with my brother, Plastic Eric, from the Plastic Soundwave Cult, and you can play along and follow along by subscribing to both channels. In Eric's last video, he talked about songs from the Big Chair, Tears for Fears, big album. And I have that one. Of course, we've been familiar with that since it came out. Classic record. Every track on it is good. It's one of those records that I don't include amongst my personal favorite 80s records, but I would definitely put it on a list of the best 80s records, if that makes any sense, if the nuance of that connects with you. I feel kind of bad because I had just done King's the Wild Frontier and Adamant, Tears for Fears, big 80s acts. I wanted to get away from the 80s for the connection, but I also had to make the connection really quickly. So it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction, and I kind of had to go with something I could think of over something that I researched deeply. And so, sticking with the 80s, I decided I don't have to feel so bad because prior to last week, I'd only done one 80s album in the last 3 months. I've been so self-conscious about pounding the 80s to death that I've actively avoided connecting to 80s albums so I don't feel like a one-note, one-trick pony. The connection is the fact that Songs from the Big Chair, the second Tears for Fears album, had both Shout and Everybody Wants to Rule the World on it. And both of those songs went to number one in the US on the Billboard Hot 100. And those are the only two singles that Tears for Fears ever landed at number one on the US singles chart. And I was aware just off the top of my head of another situation where that came to pass, and I'm jumping back to 1980, same as King's the Wild Frontier, to an album by one of the great bands, one of the long-time running bands, but that only ever had two number one hits in the US, and they both came from the same album. And that band is Queen, and that album is The Game. The two singles being Crazy Little Thing Called Love and another one, Bites the Dust. Crazy Little Thing Called Love being a sort of a rockabilly Freddie Mercury composition that he came up with, supposedly, in the bath, playing the acoustic guitar, which was an instrument that he had limited skill on. And he just knocked out this tune and was really super excited about it and was really sure that Brian May would not be enthusiastic about it. So while Brian May was away, they were in Munich recording. He gathered everybody up, other than Brian May, Roger Taylor and John Deacon, the bassist, and got together with the producer and just kind of banged it out real quick. And it is sort of antithetical to everything Queen was up to that point. Really big, pompous, Bohemian Rhapsodies and songs like that. Don't Stop Me Now. We Will Rock You. We Are the Champions. These kind of big presences. And this was just a little rockabilly tune that I've written an essay about The Game. It's something that I would love to use as sort of a script for a video. I sometimes think about I would like to revisit some of these collection connection albums and do sort of a short but narrated, as opposed to off the cuff, just trying to call up the information as I need it, version of talking about the album. I invariably forget to say things that I've looked up, and I invariably cut myself off 3 times per sentence to interject something else. And so it would be nice to do all that in an edited version beforehand and present an album in a little different way. But yeah, the game is one of the albums that I've actually already written kind of a script for. And so some of the things that I'm aware of about this album is that it was born out of the sort of the wreckage of Jazz, which was their previous album in 1978. It didn't do all that well, and it felt after 1977, I think, with punk and disco coming in, they felt like the old guard. They didn't feel super relevant anymore. They were ready to try something new. And at the same time, so that's sort of where they were in the broader culture, but at the same time, Freddie Mercury personally had been kind of going hog wild in the gay clubs in New York, and then subsequently in Munich while they were in Germany. And he really wanted to bring some of that, I guess, energy. It's funny that the leather aesthetic came from the fact that Freddie Mercury had adopted. I mean, that was the uniform of choice in these gay clubs and bars that he was frequenting. And although I couldn't find necessarily confirmation of this, I feel like the rest of the band felt like they needed to get into the leather too, to make it kind of a look like they were looking tough and not like all of a sudden there was a very gay front man in a time when being gay was still taboo. It's like Freddie Mercury kind of wanted to come out, and it's as flamboyant as he was as a front man. It's crazy to believe that there was ever a time when he wasn't thought to be gay or bisexual. But so that lended to it. And then two of the bigger things, I guess, industry wise, music industry wise, is that the game is the first album that they put out that was not produced by Roy Thomas Baker. They were so anxious to do something different that they hired a German producer, Reinhold Mack, who just went by Mack on the album, on the liner notes. I think professionally he just went by Mack. That's why they were in Germany recording. And then they broke their own sort of gatekeeping of no synths. It opens up, Play the Game opens up with some synths that Reinhold Mack convinced them to use. I think they put in the liner notes of all their albums, no synths up until the game, but they wanted to feel less ponderous. They wanted to feel like they were able to be a little more loose, come up with things a little more quickly, a little more off the cuff. And Mac, the producer, convinced them that synthesizers were the way to do that, rather than spending weeks upon weeks meticulously coming up with ways to make Brian May's guitar sound like, a horn section. And if you feel like you want to be able to come in and pump out some music, synths are the way to go. So strangely, they went forward and backward at the same time, because there's a very 50s aesthetic, not only with the rockabilly of Crazy Little Thing Called Love, but the Roger Taylor compositions definitely feel like they're looking back, Rocket, and Coming Soon. And I gotta mention Dragon Attack, because it's super silly, but it is a super fantastic jam of a song. I think it's probably one of the songs that I would have pinpointed as being embarrassed of when I kind of started going in an alternative college music kind of direction, just a few years after this. But I was only 8 at the time that the game came out. It was definitely not alternative. In fact, this album was my first kind of awakening to how music worked. It always felt like songs just sort of existed before this, but Queen was the one band at 8 years old that I kind of knew their catalog. My brother had become a fan. Eric, good old Plastic Eric, over there on his channel, he had become a fan in the couple of years before that, and so I heard all those records. And then when they started playing New Queen, I couldn't wrap my head around it exactly. I'm like, new Queen? We know all the Queen, and none of the Queen sounds like this. So the fact that it was a stylistic change and it was the first new album that they had come out with since we had become fans was the first inkling that bands could continue to make music, that songs weren't just things that existed in the ether that you could pull down and listen to on the radio, but that people had to make that, and we're continuing to make it, you know? It seems really dumb and naive, and I suppose it is, but I couldn't wrap my head around new music being made. It just felt like, oh, it's this song's turn for a time in the spotlight, but they were all just sort of existing songs. But anyway, so that I have a special. That's why I had written a short essay on it. Kind of a special relationship with the game. Super long history with it. Then it's probably one of the oldest albums that I am familiar with in its entirety, from the time that it came out. And yeah, anyway, I will throw that back over to Eric. So the connection is 2 number one singles on the US Billboard 100, and those being the only 2 number one singles that band ever scored in the US. So Tears for Fears had Shout and Everybody Wants to Rule the World, and Queen had Another One Bites the Dust and Crazy Little Thing Called Love. Some mouthful song titles in there. But I will throw that over to Eric. You can look for his response on Monday. This is our last collection connection of 2022. So I hope you had a good one. I hope you feel like binge watching some of our old episodes. Just a suggestion. But if not, we'll see you in the new year. And thanks for watching. Bye-bye.